I am a South Asian artist. I was born and raised in London, but I actually moved to Pakistan for a couple of years. Um, I started painting in Pakistan because when we moved here, I didn't know the language, which is Urdu, and the only subject being taught in school that didn't require a language was art. It was really hard for me to keep up with any other subject, that with art, you just kind of you do it. So I think that's really truly when I finally like found a love for something. I do work with a lot of memories and feelings, experiences. Um, the way that I see it is all of us are going through life experiencing really intense and overwhelming emotions at times. And, we move on from it and we forget that it ever happened at some point. But for me as an artist, it's really difficult. I mean, me as a person, it's really difficult for me to forget what that moment felt like and what that emotion felt like. So I go back to that emotion and I see kind of what was associated with the emotion at the time, what was happening. And then I kind of like to create a scene, a painting around that moment that would describe how I was feeling and what was happening at the time, just to kind of capture that emotion. So my mom is actually Indian Gujarati. My dad is Pakistani, Punjabi. Um, I kind of was lucky enough to put my foot in both cultures and both worlds. Like I get to see my mom's Indian saris and my nani's Gujarati food and the language. And I also have the privilege of seeing my dad's Pakistani traditions and the patterns and the fabrics. And I think just navigating, they're so similar, but they're so different, to somebody who's living both of these lives. And I think the way that I see it is I kind of find the similarities in both traditions, both cultures, and kind of like to delve into patterns and colors from each side and kind of mix that into my work. For me, I feel like I'm bringing together something that's so far apart and so opposing to one another. Like our countries, India, Pakistan, it's not, they don't go all together. And to be somebody who doesn't really know where they belong, I think for me, bringing both things together is part of my identity. It's who I am. That's how I was created, bringing two cultures together. Living in London, it was really cool actually. Growing up in London, you're made to feel like you're super brown, like a super Pakistani, and you feel like an outsider. And while I was in that feeling, I discovered that the only thing that makes me comfortable, because like obviously you hate your skin, there's a lot of discrimination, you don't really like the person that you are, like you wish you were just like everybody else. But growing up there and then like exploring my culture and finally understanding that what makes me different, what my culture, my skin, what makes me different is actually what makes me unique. It's not a bad thing to be brown. It's not a bad thing to look like this, like to have the same, to have like just to smell like curry is not like an insult, like curry is a beautiful thing. So I think growing up in London, it shaped me because growing up there, hating my skin my entire life, it just kind of switched one day and I was like, this is who I am, like this is what I want to do in my life. I want to, it basically living in London kind of helped me shape my journey and like helped me understand what I want to do, which direction I want to take my art, what voice I want to raise, like I want to help other girls grow up not feeling like this, knowing that there's other brown girls there and, we're happy with our skin, we're happy with who we are, and you should be too. I actually do tend to focus on South Asian women in my paintings, mostly because I think I've seen so much struggle just by being a woman in a culture, like being Pakistani, Indian, South Asian, it's struggle of its own. But then being a woman, a South Asian woman, is like a whole different world. Like sometimes you're actually shocked, like, what do you mean arranged marriage is a thing? What do you mean like somebody's going to arrange the person I'm gonna marry? Like what does that mean, So I feel like women go through insane experiences. It's a third world culture, so I understand, but I feel like it's my responsibility as somebody who has this platform, who has been raised abroad. I have this privilege and responsibility to raise awareness for what's happening in India and Pakistan, that women are being suppressed, women are, their voices are dubbed down. Women are going through so much and nobody knows about it. I remember when I was in university and I was talking about a whole arranged marriage that was happening where the girl was unhappy. And my university was shocked. Like, what do you mean? What does that, what do you mean arranged marriage with a woman is unhappy? Like, what does that mean? But it was so common from where I came from. And that's when I knew, like, it's my responsibility to paint these women, to shed light on what they're going through, to let them know that they're not alone, you know? I think that's where like being an artist comes into play because colors have a very powerful role in a painting where, as you would see red, it's like this symbol of power, that's like it's right in your face, where like a muted yellow would be something in the background. So I feel like I'm able to balance out a composition with its colors. So using colors, I will bring kind of like attention to what's happening. But the composition itself, like one of my paintings has a composition of a woman whose face is hidden and she's just sat in a specific position. The colors are so in your face. Red kind of grasps you to the painting, but the composition itself is very simple. She's just sitting there hiding herself. So I think that's kind of how I play around with stories and colors. So this painting is actually a moment in my life where I had to choose between following the traditions of a South Asian household and expectations of a woman in a South Asian household, or follow my dreams as an artist. I had two options, which is kind of just do the arranged marriage, just be the typical, daughter and like do the role and kind of fit into your place, or I could break out of that norm and follow my passion to paint and create. You can't do both in this culture. And it was a very tough decision for me because I remember I spent months and I was just so depressed, thinking I don't want to let my family down, but how can I live with myself if I don't do what I was born to do? So that painting, the composition itself is just me kind of still in time, dressed in traditional bridal clothes, holding this flower, this bright, luminous, gorgeous white flower, just like looking at my options and just sitting in what I think my life is going to be like. But yeah, it's just a moment in my life. That was it was a huge opportunity. We got to exhibit at the Hugo Boss flagship store, the Boss flagship store, which was at Oxford Street. It was the opening event, and it was a collection of six South Asian artists who exhibited their work. It was a huge opportunity for us. I was 2 months out of university, and it was insane recognition, like to put us on a platform like that. We are a minority, especially in the art world, like we're not, our South Asian art is not, like super big in the art world. So to have South Asian artists collaborate with such a big brand, which is a very well-known brand, it was an absolute honor and privilege. And it really did help put me on the map, and it kind of helped me continue my journey from there. I met amazing people, I learned amazing things. I think it's really important to help minorities out where you can, because you never know what they could do after that. I mean, look, I'm here now. So um it was a very it was a it was a coincidence actually. The producer, which is Nav, she found me off of somewhere. She was just looking around and she saw my work, and then she saw me, and then she was like, I really want you to do this. And it was so random. Honestly, I feel like it was God sent, and it was such an honor and such a privilege to experience this. It was the first ever time I've ever been on TV, first ever time I've ever done anything like this, been on a set, like been on camera, um, painted a portrait of such an incredible story. It was such an honor, such a privilege. And I found myself like super excited in the beginning of it, I feel, but the more it came to an end, the more it came to like when the show was, finally ending and the painting was being shown, it was so heavy for me because in the beginning it was like, oh, I'm going on TV, I'm an artist, this is new for me. But in the end, I got so consumed by the story of the boys and the experience of the whole thing. And I actually understood what Extraordinary Portraits was actually about. It's not just a regular TV show, They're bringing real life people onto screen to share their story with the world because these people are incredible and they're real, unlike, like fake shows and just like kind of fiction, this is like this is real. This is real world stuff. And it had me in tears in the end, to be honest. Like it was an experience. I will never forget it. No, getting to know Jordan and Kian, it did definitely shape the portrait because the more I got to know them, it was like, wow, they have such a huge story. And you want to paint them to be these heroes, like you want them to look like these guys that are just like fighting this huge battle who have just gone through so much. And I first thought they were going to be on a pedestal and like they were going to be holding spears, like warriors. But to be honest, the more I got to know them, they were just like they were just these regular human beings who like to get in a laugh when they can and to not think about all the horrible going on in the world and just laugh and talk with their dad and play with their dog and just go for a run just because they feel like it, not because they're training for anything, and I felt like that's who they deserve to be remembered as. Everybody will know the work they did for sure. But I felt like the painting should depict something that the world doesn't get to see, The world has always been, seeing them through their Instagram and their social media and their like achievements in the world. But I don't think that the world has ever gotten to see them as they are, like Jordan and Kian. They are just two brothers at the end of the day, two boys who have just gone through a lot, but they're still, their family, and that is what I thought should have just been captured. I think it was probably around the time when I was going through my own kind of experiences and when I started to paint about them and I started to talk about my work to the people around me. It was like a shock to them. They were like, what's going on? Like, this is a thing. And people started telling me like, well, you need to talk about this stuff more. People don't even know about these things happening in the world. And that's when I kind of knew that if I have just brought awareness to a whole new world and I've given girls back home some sort of hope to look up to, like if she could make it out, if she's made it as an artist, we could too, So that's when I knew like it's my responsibility. I've been given such a privilege. I can't just take it for granted, I need to do something with it. I think that sometimes, like when you're making South Asian art, you can go a bit overboard with the patterns and the jhumke and the jewelry. It can be too traditional sometimes, like too much in your face. Like look at our culture, I think it could be a bit more simple as well. But in general, showing South Asian art, like I think that is extremely important. Like it is one of the most important things that I can do as a South Asian artist, that anybody could do as a South Asian artist, because we're not on the map, and there's not enough of us to get us on the map. So many people give up so early. There's so much talent in the world. But I feel like getting our name out there, getting recognition that we deserve, I think that's really important. I think that's really significant so that the next generation doesn't feel hatred towards their own skin, they feel proud that we are South Asian, There is a name for us out there. There are opportunities for us out there. I think that now the art world is it's a very difficult place and it is looking for very like modern and very like elite kind of art, which is sometimes beyond my understanding. um a challenge has been that not many people recognize South Asian art and South Asian artists. So wherever I do get opportunities, it's been great, like I do admit that I have gotten way more than many artists that I know. um and I'm very lucky and very honored. But it has been a challenge to really truly still get myself acquainted with a gallery, acquainted with sellers, buyers, like having that regular source of income. Like I'm still an emerging artist, I'm still struggling, it is still a battle. But the recognition of being South Asian does kind of hurt that kind of source of income a bit. I think like how you will have a moment in your life or an experience that will just take you by shock, and like no one else would have gone through that. No one else would understand what's happening. And for you, it's just like, oh my God, like how does nobody around me like comprehend how big this is? I think when you feel that emotion, or when I feel that emotion, that's when I know that it needs to be captured. Anything that takes me, anything that makes me stop for a second and think, what is going on? Like that's the thing that I need to capture. Something that makes you feel. We're so out of touch these days with social media and stuff. Like we're barely, no one really sits down with their emotions anymore. And I think that's so important. It's a very important part of being a human being. So any chance that I get in touch with my emotions, I think, okay, this needs to be talked about. I hope they look at my work and feel some sort of relatability, feel like they're not alone. All of us are going through it. I want us to know that there are opportunities for us out there. I know it's tough. It's more tough for them than it is for me, but you can do it, like I've come this far, right? And I'm 24 years old. I've come this far, and it's because I haven't stopped. It's because I didn't give up. Giving up, wasted potential is truly something so sad, just to give up midway, like keep going. Like my advice would be like, don't stop, because you are special. Everyone is special. Everyone has something to give to the world, to contribute. So don't stop because you feel like you're not good enough, your value shouldn't be determined by what people are thinking and what people are perceiving you as. Your value should be determined by you. Are you happy with what you're doing? Is this making you happy? Continue. Don't give up. I feel like these days everyone is working with AI, digital art, lots of like screen technology kind of art. And to be honest with you, I've never been good with technology, just been horrible with it. Um, but the only like I think one of the experiences that make me feel human is like a canvas with a paint, and just like, in that moment, every stroke, every line, every layer, I do it myself. I put my own time and effort into it. And I feel like you can't get that on a screen. This is part of being human outside of this whole world of technology. But oils, I feel like, has a very rich kind of idea to it. And the way just oil looks is just gorgeous. It depicts South Asian culture really well. South Asian culture, patterns, it's very bright and loud, and they're very vibrant. And I feel like you can get like a really good understanding with depth and brightness, that balance with oil really well.